England seems like, from an outsider's perspective, England seems like it's become extremely liberal and the actual fundamentals of the society are falling apart. Australia is doing the same thing. Canada is doing the same thing. America was on that path until this election. So, you've got an extremely divisive campaign. Both parties are saying it's going to be the end of it all if they don't win, but then it finishes and it's like, okay, get them next year. Like what? There's a ton of extreme rhetoric. There was like the assassination. It's been fucking crazy. Like I've been sitting here as an Australian going like, wow, this is, I'm in New York. I'm like, this is really, really interesting. I tell my kids in 40 years' time that I was in the epicenter of the US during this whole thing. But what I found really interesting, and I'd love to get your thoughts on, is there's all this extremity, but then there is a quiet majority that made their views very clear this election in the US, with the Republicans who are somewhat, more conservative, but it's quite a centrist party these days. They made their views clear by the winning of the popular vote, the Electoral College, and although not like related specifically to voting, now the Supreme Court is looking like it's going to be Republican controlled. So the question is somewhat nuanced because we tie into COVID. I myself had the experience of not being aligned with what the narrative was being put forward at the time and not being able to understand why it felt off, and then getting shamed into decisions. Like, I got vaccinated and it was one of my biggest regrets I had because I didn't need to. And my logic of it was I'm in the lowest cohort of, potentially getting sick from COVID. I'm in the highest cohort of potentially getting sick from the vaccine. I am extremely healthy and health conscious and have spent a lot of time and energy on this. But if I don't do this, I'm ostracized by my friends. I'm ostracized by my family. I'm ostracized by my industry, which was at the time the music industry, doing events and festivals. And that pressure, that social pressure, was the catalyst to do it. And then I regret that. Now, it's clear as day by the way that the US has led with this election that there is a quiet majority of people that are reasonable, that are moderate, that are thoughtful and caring, but they get labeled as racist or bigots or misogynists when they don't agree with like an intensely far left liberal ideology. So how would you find, from your view of this world, you're a black man, you've lived in an Arab country, you're now in the UK. You've got a few different.
I'm not in the UK now.
I'm in Dubai. You were in the UK. You're now in Dubai. How would, based off your understanding of all of this, it's a very wide question. How would these people navigate this environment without effectively alienating those around them when possible?
Sorry, you're
so
talking about
question.
You're worried about who alienating who?
The quiet majority getting alienated by their friends, their peers, their co-workers because of how divisive it is, but they just want to live their life and they want to make, they want to make certain decisions, but they feel like they get attacked by the extremities.
I feel like it comes back to something I answered earlier, and you kind of have to not give a crap. I'm dead serious. If somebody is going to ostracize you, whether that's for not taking a jab or for voting for a different person to them or having slightly different beliefs on something, if they want to kick you out of their life for that reason, they don't belong in your life. And I am absolutely opposed to kicking out friends, family members, or even just being harsh or nasty to people because they have different beliefs to you. I would not do such a thing. And I don't do such a thing. But if someone wants to treat you that way, then they don't truly respect you. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, because I hear people say, oh, I was friends with this person for all this time. And then they found out I voted Trump and, they kicked me out of their life and we haven't spoken since or this. And I'm like, that person never respected you. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you. Do you know how many friends or family members I've lost or who have ostracized me over the past 6 years over all the things I've said? And I'm pretty vocal. I'm pretty public. I'm pretty out there. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many friends I've lost over all of it?
I don't know. How many?
0.
Okay.
0. Okay. And we don't all agree on all this stuff. All right. I don't agree with, my family members would not be pleased by me even owning this. Okay. But you know what? They love me and they respect me. So, and we're all emotionally mature enough to be able to have those conversations. So if people are incapable of that and they want to, if someone doesn't want you in their life, why are you trying to appease them anyway? Honestly, like, why are you trying to appease them? Like, why are you going to be, oh, this person wants to, delete me from their life because I voted Republican. I'm like, let them go. That's on them. Hopefully they'll be wise enough, given enough time to realize what a stupid thing to do that is, and to cut off a relationship and cut off someone who likes and cares about you and who you have a history with because of something like voting. Let's just invert it for a minute. Let's invert that for a minute. Okay. Let's invert both of these things. Okay. Let's go back to 2021 or 2022. Can you imagine ostracizing someone because they took the jab?
Not at all.
Right? You've got a friend and your friend is like, maybe you don't want to take the jab and they do, or a family member, and you're like, oh, you know what? Like, that's not for me. I don't think I need it, but okay, and you're like when you invert it, it's insane. You meet someone who voted for Democrat, you met someone who voted for Clinton or voted for Biden or voted for Kamala Harris, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's it. We can't be friends. We can't talk anymore. You voted for Kamala Harris. Like, what? Like, when I flip it, like, I can't even imagine this. And there's a word that you used, and I actually want to kind of correct you, because the people who think like this are not liberal. And I think that word actually needs to be, I'm very careful about using language properly. And you cannot call people who behave like this liberal, because it's completely illiberal. It's authoritarian. There's nothing liberal about wanting to force an injection into people's arms against their will. There's nothing liberal about being against free speech. There's nothing liberal about ostracizing family members and friends because they have a differing political belief to you or they vote differently. Like, there's 8 billion people in this world, and we all need to be able to, at a minimum, get on with each other so that we don't tear each other to pieces. So if someone is not capable of doing that, then they need to have a look in the mirror, right? They need to stop pointing the finger everywhere else, and they need to have a think about themselves. They also need to analyze their own worldview, because, okay, wake up now, you're in the minority. Okay. So if your answer is just, oh, most of the people in America are just racist, that's how Trump won. It's like, really? So after the past 10 years, your analysis of this whole situation is that half the country is just a bunch of racist bigots. Like, do you not have any insight? Do you not do any self-reflection? So, I would say, like, number one, like, look, that's, if people are going to go, let them go. But, that's them who need to do the work. That's not on me. That's not on you. That's not on anyone. I say that especially at this point because, the first Trump election and election campaign, it was 8 to 9 years ago at this point.
You learn a lot in 8 years.
Yeah. Like, people have had 8 years to work this out. So if you are still kind of running that same script from 2015, 2016, I'm just like, bro, like, that's your bad. You have to update your mental software. Otherwise, you're just not going to understand the world or anybody in it.
Yeah, I guess maybe at this point in time, there just needs to be an acceptance of what it is, and letting people go, I think, is probably the best way to approach it. But respectfully, just like, okay, that's dude, for you.
It's up to you. Look. There's many people I love in this world. If one of my friends or someone I thought was a friend is just like, yeah, I'm just cutting you off because I don't like your political beliefs, or I don't like that you shook hands with this person, or you did a podcast with that person, or whatever. I mean, I would try to engage a conversation to find out where they're coming from. But if they're really just like, nope, I'm just cutting you off and blocking you and deleting your number, I'd be like, all right, bye. Like, your loss. I'm freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, no, seriously, like, I'm not trying to be cocky here. I'd just be like, okay, well, that was stupid, right? Why would you just burn, why would you just burn a bridge with someone who has been good to you and who likes you and who like, gosh, I have so many friends who, like, we have all sorts of discussions and debates and arguments about all sorts of topics. Many of them more important than politics. But man, like, those are people that I love. Like, the idea of, it doesn't even sort of compute in my brain that I would let a friend go or ostracize a family member over, gosh, like, it would take a lot for that, man. It would take some real heinous, really, really heinous behavior.
That says a lot. That says a lot on how this has been turned into such a flurry of intense emotions. Because it's, to some people, it probably is heinous behavior, which makes no sense in my brain.
But it's not. This is my point. Is that's their fault. That is their fault. If these people, if they genuinely don't get it, look, it doesn't take that much empathy and tolerance, funnily enough, and just intellectual curiosity to understand how and why people think the way that they do. Okay. Do you know what it would be like? It would be like, imagine if me at 38 years old, okay, I believe in God. I'm a Christian. And imagine I meet someone who's an atheist. And they're like, no, I don't believe in God. I don't believe God's real. I just think like it's all fake and made, right? Like, wouldn't it be my bad if I had never even sort of like if I couldn't even fathom how that person thought that way? Isn't that my fault? Right? Like, I believe in God, and I've always believed in God, but I don't find it particularly difficult to understand that not everybody does, and to understand why not everybody does. And then to have a basic level of empathy and human decency that even if they think I'm wrong and I think they're wrong, we can still like each other and we can still have a conversation and a relationship or so on, right? Like, you could argue that there is nothing more important than that. Right? You could argue that there is
nothing more important than that.
Yeah. You could say like that is the most important thing. And even on that, I'm like, you know what? I can think of a world where I grew up in a different way and so on and so forth. Like, I don't find it difficult to understand why people have different religious beliefs or no religious beliefs, or why people think, like, I don't find it hard to understand why somebody, I tend to be more conservative on most issues, but I don't find it like extraordinarily impossible to understand how somebody could be more liberal or more progressive or more left wing. Like, I can make those arguments myself. I might not think it's the right argument, but I understand the position. And if I didn't, I'd be like, hey, why don't I talk to somebody? Right. So if I were someone who was super confused, let's say I'm like a lifelong Democrat, lefty liberal, and I'm like confused, man, like Trump has run 3 times and he's won twice. Like, how does he keep winning? I'd be like, okay, there's over 70 million people in my own country who voted for him. Why don't I talk to one of them? Right? So that brother of yours or friend of yours or whatever who voted the way you don't understand, why don't you talk to them? Why don't you speak to them instead of going, okay, well, I'm just cutting you off. I'm going to stick my fingers in my ears and like scream. Just be like, okay, why don't we have a conversation? That's what I would do.